A Werewolf Shifter Romance Audiobook. Chapter 1. The Binding. I was 19 the first time I ever broke a promise to my father. And I did it in front of a mirror, with shaking fingers and a heart that felt like it was trying to claw its way out of my ribs. The silver cuff came off with a soft, treacherous click. I'd worn it every day since I was 12. Cold, thin, etched with ancient runes that burned if my wolf ever pushed too hard against the binding. Dad called it protection. I called it a collar. Tonight, I wanted to feel my own pulse without metal in the way. The girl staring back at me looked nothing like a princess. Black hoodie 2 sizes too big, ripped jeans, dark hair twisted into a messy knot, eyes the color of winter storms. No crown, no guards. Just me. Ravenna Valorian. But everyone here would only ever know me as Raven. Plain, wolfless Raven, who somehow conned her way into Silvercrest University. I flexed my wrist. The skin underneath the cuff was pale and scarred, like moonlight on snow. For the first time in 7 years, the air tasted alive. Pine needles, distant city smoke, the electric tang of freedom. My wolf stirred, a low golden ripple beneath my skin. "Hello, old friend. Did you miss me as much as I missed you?" I should have been terrified. If anyone scented what I really was, the assassins would come before sunrise. My father's enemies had been hunting the hidden Aurelian heir since the day I was born. That's why he kept me locked in the royal compound, homeschooled by tutors who flinched every time I asked about the outside world. That's why I learned to lie with my whole body, shoulders hunched, eyes down, heartbeat slow and human. But tonight, I was done pretending. Tomorrow, I started classes. Real classes. With real wolves who didn't know the Lichen King had a daughter. Tomorrow, I would walk into Silvercrest like I belonged there, because for the first time, I actually wanted to. I slipped the cuff into my pocket anyway. Couldn't risk leaving evidence. Dad would know the second the bond monitors in Aurelia went dark, but by then, I'd be hours away. Just another freshman in a sea of strangers. The campus was quiet when I stepped outside the dorm. 3 a.m. air sharp enough to cut. Moonlight poured over the quad like liquid silver, and every shadow felt like it was watching me. I breathed in and nearly staggered. So many wolves. So many scents. Wild, angry, lonely, hungry. They braided together into something raw and beautiful and terrifying. My knees wanted to buckle under the weight of it. That's when it happened. A scent cut through everything else, like a blade wrapped in velvet. Dark cedar smoke, winter storm, hot steel fresh from the forge. It slammed into me so hard my vision blurred at the edges. My wolf lunged forward with a snarl that rattled my bones. "Mate!" No. No, no, no. Not here, not now. Not when I was finally free for 5 damn minutes. I turned, slowly, like the world had switched to slow motion. And there he was. He stood beneath the old iron lamplight on the far side of the quad, hands in the pockets of a black leather jacket that probably cost more than my entire fake human wardrobe. Tall, stupidly tall, shoulders that looked built to carry the weight of entire territories. Hair the color of midnight, just long enough to fall into eyes that burned Arctic blue even from 50 yards away. Cassian Drake. I knew the name before I knew how to breathe again. Everyone did. Heir to the Iron Fang pack, the biggest, richest, meanest pack on the continent. Future alpha, untouchable, ruthless. The kind of beautiful that made wolves kneel before he even opened his mouth. And right now, those lethal eyes were locked on me. The bond snapped taut between us like a live wire dragged across bare skin. I felt it in my teeth, my fingertips, the sudden liquid heat low in my stomach. He tilted his head, slow, predatory. A smile curved his mouth, not kind. Then he started walking toward me. Every step echoed like a war drum. My wolf was losing her mind, whining and pacing and trying to shove golden power through veins that had been bound for years. I couldn't move, couldn't think, could only stand there drowning in cedar and storm, while the most dangerous wolf on campus closed the distance like he already owned me. I finally sucked in a breath that tasted like him, and I smiled, small, sharp, secret. Tomorrow, Cassian Drake was going to learn exactly what happened when you hunted something that had been caged its whole life. Let him come. I wasn't running tonight. Chapter 2. Scent of Rejection. I didn't sleep after he started walking toward me. I couldn't. Every heartbeat carried his scent deeper into my lungs until I was drunk on cedar and storm, and the impossible truth that the moon goddess had tied me to Cassian Drake. By the time the sun bled gold across the campus roofs, I had the cuff locked back around my wrist and my mask welded into place. Shoulders curved inward, eyes soft and harmless. The perfect picture of a wolfless girl who had no business being here. I told myself I could handle this. I'd spent years pretending to be nothing. One more day wouldn't kill me. The first half of the morning was a blur of syllabi and forced smiles. Then the bell tower struck noon, and the entire university spilled out into the central courtyard for the traditional welcome feast. Tables groaned under roasted meat and honeyed fruit. Music pulsed from hidden speakers. Banners of every major pack snapped in the wind, scarlet and silver and midnight blue. I hovered at the edge of the crowd, hood up, clutching a plate I didn't want, when the air changed. It was subtle at first, like the moment before thunder. Conversations faltered, phones lifted. A ripple of excitement passed through the courtyard like wildfire. Cassian had arrived. He moved through the parting crowd the way a blade moves through silk. Flanked by his inner circle, Serafina Voss already clinging to his arm like ivy on marble. Her platinum hair caught the sunlight, and her smile was all perfect teeth and poison. I should have looked away. I didn't. His gaze swept the courtyard and locked on me instantly, like the bond was a leash he could yank whenever he felt like it. Something dark and hungry flashed across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by cold amusement. He leaned down to murmur something in Serafina's ear. She laughed, high and crystal sharp, and the sound scraped over my skin. My wolf snarled so loudly I tasted blood where I'd bitten my tongue. Cassian stepped up onto the low stone platform at the center of the courtyard, the same place freshmen made silly speeches or got playfully dunked in the fountain. Today, it looked like a stage set for an execution. And I was the condemned. He didn't bother with a microphone. He didn't need one. That voice carried like rolling thunder. "Silvercrest," he began, lazy smile curling. "Every year the moon goddess plays her little jokes on us. This year, apparently, she's feeling especially creative." Laughter rippled through his friends. Phones angled toward me. My stomach turned to ice. He lifted one hand and pointed, straight at me. "Ravenna Valorian," he said, tasting my name like it was something sour. "Stand up." 100 heads swiveled. I felt every stare like claws. I could have run. I could have dropped my plate and disappeared into the crowd, vanished before anyone realized I was more than I seemed. Instead, I set my plate on the nearest table, slow and deliberate, and walked forward until I stood at the foot of the platform. Hood still up, hands loose at my sides, chin lifted just enough. His eyes narrowed, surprised I'd obeyed. "Word is," he continued, voice velvet over steel, "the goddess decided a wolfless stray would be a fitting mate for the future alpha of Fang." The courtyard erupted, gasps, laughter, a few pitying murmurs. Someone actually whistled. Serafina stepped closer to him, sliding her hand possessively up his chest. "Poor thing," she cooed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Imagine being paired with something that can't even shift." Cassian's gaze never left mine. "So I'm here to correct the goddess's mistake," he said. "Publicly." He extended his hand toward Serafina. She placed hers in it like they'd rehearsed this 100 times. "I, Cassian Drake, heir of Fang, reject Ravenna Valorian as my fated mate." The words hit me like a physical blow. The bond twisted inside my chest, sharp, searing, wrong. My wolf threw herself against the binding so hard the silver cuff burned white-hot against my skin. I didn't flinch, didn't fall, didn't give him the satisfaction of a single tear. Instead, I smiled. Small, slow, razor sharp. "And I said, soft enough that only the people closest could hear, but loud enough that the phones caught every syllable. "Accept your rejection, Cassian Drake." A stunned hush fell, because no one ever accepted a rejection from Cassian Drake. They begged. They cried. They shattered. I simply turned on my heel and started walking away. Behind me, I heard Seraphina's triumphant laugh, heard Cassian's low, furious growl that sounded almost confused. My legs carried me across the courtyard while my wolf screamed and screamed inside my skull, a golden hurricane barely contained. The cuff was scorching now, runes glowing faintly beneath my sleeve. One more surge from her, and the binding would snap right here in front of everyone. I made it to the shadows of the old oak grove before my knees finally buckled. I pressed my back to rough bark, dragged in lungfuls of air that tasted like humiliation and smoke and him. The bond was still there, broken, jagged, bleeding. But it was mine now, severed on my terms. I lifted my head to the sky and laughed once, breathless, bitter, beautiful. Enjoy the crown while it lasts, Cassian Drake, because one day very soon, you're going to look up from that throne you love so much and see me standing over you wearing the real one. Soft inhale, voice dropping to a whisper. And when that day comes, mate, you'll wish you'd never taught me how cruel the world could be. Chapter 3. The Taste of Crown Less. I didn't go back to the dorm that night. After the courtyard, after the laughter and the phones, and the sound of my own heartbeat breaking in public, I climbed the fire escape to the roof of the oldest library and stayed there until the sky turned the color of bruised violets. The city sprawled beneath me, Silvercrest's glowing veins of streetlights, the black ribbon of the river, the distant silhouette of Iron Fang territory rising like jagged teeth against the horizon. Somewhere out there, Cassian was probably celebrating with Seraphina draped over him like a victory flag. I sat on the cold ledge, knees drawn to my chest, and let the wind tear through my hair. The cuff was still burning, a circle of fire around my wrist. My wolf paced in furious circles inside me, golden eyes blazing, claws scraping at the walls I'd built to keep her quiet. I tasted blood again. I'd bitten the inside of my cheek so hard it split. For the first time in years, I let myself remember what it felt like to be 12 years old, standing in the royal training yard while my father's generals forced me to my knees. "You are the only female alpha born in 5 centuries, Ravenna," my father had said, voice like winter stone. "That makes you a miracle to some, and a threat to everyone else. Hide the miracle. Survive." So I hid. I wore the cuff. I swallowed my growl. I let them call me broken. Tonight the Iron Fang heir had looked at the mask I'd worn my entire life and laughed, and something inside me finally cracked open. I pressed my forehead to my knees and whispered into the dark, "I'm tired of surviving." The wind carried my words away, but my wolf heard them. She stilled, listened, then pressed her massive head against the inside of my ribs like a promise. I stayed on that roof until dawn painted the sky rose gold, and the campus began to wake beneath me. Only then did I climb down, slip through the silent stacks of the library, and find a corner table hidden between towering shelves of forgotten grimoires. I needed quiet. I needed armor. I needed to remember who I was before the world taught me to be afraid. I was tracing the raised scars under the cuff, absent, lost in memory, when his scent found me again. Cedar and storm and unforgiving steel. My head snapped up. Cassian stood at the end of the aisle, one shoulder against the shelf, watching me like a predator who'd finally cornered something rare and dangerous. The morning light slanted through the high windows and cut across his face. Sharp cheekbones, cruel mouth, eyes the color of glacier melt. He was alone. No entourage, no Seraphina. Just him and the bond that still bled between us, raw and ugly and impossible to ignore. I closed the book in my lap with a soft thud that sounded too loud in the silence. He didn't speak at first, Just studied me, the way you study a puzzle you're furious you can't solve. I let him look. Let him see the exhaustion under my eyes. The dried blood at the corner of my mouth. The way my fingers trembled before I curled them into fists. Finally, he pushed off the shelf and walked forward. Slow, deliberate steps that echoed like heartbeats. When he was 3 feet away, he stopped. Close enough that his scent flooded my lungs again. Close enough that I could see the faint silver scar that cut through his left eyebrow. A fight he'd won, no doubt. "You accepted it," he said at last, voice low. Rough, like he hadn't slept either. "No one accepts." I lifted my chin. "I'm not, no one." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or the first hint of unease. He took another step. One more, and he'd be close enough to touch. I didn't move back. "Why do you smell like power and lies?" he asked, so quietly it felt like a secret. My pulse stuttered. For one wild second, the cuff burned hotter, and I thought he saw. Thought he scented the truth coiled inside me like molten gold. I leaned forward instead, just enough that our knees almost brushed. "Because some of us," I whispered, "have been lying so long we forgot where the mask ends and the monster begins." His breath caught, actually caught. His gaze dropped to my mouth for a heartbeat too long. Then his hand lifted, slow as sunrise, and hovered an inch from my cheek. Not touching, never touching. Just there. Heat and tension, and the ghost of what might have been if he hadn't shredded us both in front of the entire school. I felt the bond ache like a bruise. He curled his fingers into a fist and let his hand fall. "This isn't over," he said, voice raw. I smiled, small and sharp and heartbreakingly calm. "No," I answered. "It's only just begun." I stood, sliding the book back onto the shelf without looking away from him. Then I walked past him, close enough that my shoulder brushed his chest, close enough that the bond flared white-hot between us. At the end of the aisle, I paused. "Enjoy your chosen queen, Cassian Drake," I said over my shoulder. "Crowns fit some heads better when they're stolen." I left him standing there in the dust-moted light, breathing hard, staring after me like I'd just stolen something far more dangerous than a crown. And for the first time in 7 years, my wolf and I smiled the same smile. Soft exhale, almost a laugh. He has no idea what's coming. Chapter 4. Iron Fang Welcome. They call it the Unity Games. Every fall, Silvercrest sends its best to Iron Fang territory for 3 days of trials. Running, fighting, hunting. Dominance displays. A tradition that's supposed to build bridges between packs. Everyone knows it's really a 3-day festival of showing off who's strongest, richest, and cruelest. I tried to get out of it. I forged a doctor's note. I begged. I even considered breaking my own ankle. The registrar just smiled and said, "Attendance is mandatory for all scholarship students, Miss Valorian, especially the wolfless ones. Wouldn't want anyone thinking we go easy." So Friday morning, I found myself on a chartered bus, rolling through the iron gates of Iron Fang land, the cuff on my wrist hidden beneath 3 layers of sleeves and a fake smile. The estate was obscene. Black stone walls that swallowed the sunlight, towers with gargoyles shaped like snarling wolves, a private forest that stretched for miles behind the main house. Everything screamed old money, old blood, old power. Cassian's power. He greeted the buses himself, standing at the top of the marble steps in a charcoal Henley that clung to every line of muscle I was trying not to notice. Serafina was glued to his side in a crimson dress that cost more than most people's cars, her hand possessively on his arm. When my turn came to step off the bus, his gaze cut straight to me. I felt it like claws down my spine. Serafina's smile sharpened. "Look who decided to show up," she called, loud enough for the entire courtyard to hear. "The rejected stray, how adorable!" Laughter rippled through the Iron Fang wolves. Phones lifted again. Of course they did. Cassian didn't laugh. He just watched me with that unreadable glacier stare while I walked past them into the house like I belonged there. The weekend was designed to break me. Day 1. Obstacle courses built for wolves, walls too high for human strength, rivers too fast for human lungs. I was paired with Seraphina's friends. They accidentally left me behind, tripped me into mud, poured iced water over my head while I slept. I smiled through all of it, kept my head down, let them think I was weak. Day 2. The banquet. I was seated at the lowest table, farthest from the high table, where Cassian held court like a dark king. Seraphina made sure my plate was filled with food wolves can't digest. Dairy, chocolate, enough silver dust in the wine to make my throat burn. I ate every bite and thanked her sweetly. Cassian's eyes tracked me the entire night. I felt them on the back of my neck like a brand. And then came the midnight run. The final event. No rules. Just hundreds of wolves released into the private forest to hunt, chase, dominate. A chaotic celebration of raw power. Humans and bound wolves were forbidden from participating. Too dangerous. They locked the weak in the guest wing with guards at the doors. I waited until the howls faded into the distance. Waited until the house was empty and echoing. Then I walked to the balcony, climbed over the railing, and dropped 2 stories into the wet grass. The forest called me like a heartbeat. I slipped the cuff just enough, 1 notch, 2. Enough for my wolf to breathe. Enough for golden strength to flood my legs, my lungs, my blood. I ran. Not as Raven, the wolfless girl. I ran as the heir the world had never seen. The forest blurred, black trunks, silver moonlight, the taste of pine and freedom. I moved faster than any tracker wolf, faster than the wind. My paws never touched the ground because I didn't shift. I couldn't, not fully. But I was a streak of gold in the dark, untouchable. I leaped ravines. I ghosted through patrols. I left every wolf who thought they were hunting far, far behind. And then I felt him. Cassian, massive black wolf with ice blue eyes, cutting across my trail like a blade. He had scented me. Not the lie I wore, but the truth bleeding through the cracks. I should have kept running. Instead, I slowed, turned, stood in a moonlit clearing, and waited. He burst through the trees in wolf form, breath steaming in the cold, power rolling off him in waves that would have crushed a lesser wolf. He shifted mid-stride, bones cracking, muscle reshaping, until Cassian the man stood bare-chested and furious in the silver light. Chest heaving, "Ravenna!" he snarled, voice raw from the change. "What are you?" I tilted my head and smiled. For 1 heartbeat, I let the binding slip completely. Golden alpha power flared around me like living flame. Not enough to shift, but enough to make the air itself bow. The ground trembled. Every wolf in a 5-mile radius went silent at once. Cassian dropped to 1 knee without meaning to, the dominance in my blood forcing him down. His eyes went wide, Arctic blue bleeding to shocked silver. I stepped forward until I stood over him, moonlight crowning my hair like fire. "Careful, Cassian Drake," I whispered, voice layered with the growl of something ancient. "Some things are only caged until they decide not to be." Then I closed the distance, leaned down, and brushed my lips against the shell of his ear. So close I felt him shudder. "Sweet dreams, mate." I pulled the cuff tight again, locked the monster back inside, and walked away into the trees. Behind me, Cassian stayed on his knees in the dirt, breathing my name like a prayer and a curse. And for the first time all weekend, I let myself smile. Really smile. Let the games continue. I was only just getting started. Chapter 5. The Wound. I knew the moment he started hunting me for real. It wasn't the way the Iron Fang wolves suddenly stopped tripping me in the corridors. It wasn't the way Seraphina's smirks faltered when I walked past. It was the dreams. Every night after the midnight run, Cassian came to me in sleep. Not the man, not the wolf, but something in between. Black fur and glacier eyes, and a voice that scraped along my bones. "Show me what you are, Ravenna. Stop hiding. Come find me." I woke up gasping, sheets twisted around my legs, the cuff so hot it left blisters. My wolf clawed at the inside of my skin, desperate to answer him, desperate to run to him, to punish him, to claim him. I did the only thing I could. I stayed away. I skipped the classes we shared. I took different staircases. I ate in the library archives, where even the air felt centuries old. But Cassian Drake was not a wolf who accepted being ignored. On the 7th night after the run, I slipped out of the dorm at 2 a.m. to breathe. Just breathe. The campus was silver-frosted and silent, the moon a thin blade overhead. I made it as far as the abandoned bell tower before I felt him behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. His scent flooded the air, cedar, winter storm, and now something darker, desperation. "You're avoiding me," he said, voice low, rough from disuse. I leaned my forearms on the cold stone parapet and stared out over the sleeping campus. "You rejected me in front of 5,000 people. I'm giving you what you wanted. Space." A humorless laugh. "I wanted a lot of things that night. Turns out the moon goddess has a cruel sense of humor." His footsteps came closer, slow, deliberate. Heat rolled off him in waves. I felt it on the back of my neck like sunlight. "I've been digging," he said. "Your records are a ghost. No pack affiliation. No birth certificate on file after age 12. No scent trail older than a year. You're a black hole, Ravenna." I closed my eyes. "Some of us have to be." He stopped right behind me. Close enough that if I leaned back half an inch, I would touch him. I didn't. "Why do you smell like power and lies?" he asked again. Same words from the library, but this time they weren't curious. They were raw, pleading. My throat tightened. For one heartbeat, the cuff felt heavier than every crown I'd never worn. I turned. He looked wrecked. Hair messy like he'd been dragging his hands through it for days. Dark shadows under those lethal eyes. The proud line of his shoulders cracked with exhaustion. The bond between us was a living wound. Bleeding, throbbing, impossible to ignore. "Cassian," I said softly, "go home." He stepped closer instead, until the toes of his boots touched mine, until I had to tip my head back to hold his gaze. "I can't," he whispered. I close my eyes, and I see gold fire in the forest. I hear a growl that makes my wolf want to roll over and bare his throat, and every time I try to hate you for it, the bond laughs in my face. His hand lifted, slow, trembling, and stopped an inch from my cheek again. Same as in the library, never quite touching. "Tell me what you are," he said, voice breaking on the words. "Please." I felt my wolf surge forward, golden and furious and aching. The cuff flared white-hot, runes glowing beneath my sleeve like molten brands. For one terrifying second, I almost did it. I almost let the binding snap and showed him everything. The crown, the throne, the bloodline that could crush his entire pack with a single command. Instead, I stepped back. The space between us felt like a canyon. "I'm the girl you called worthless," I said, and my voice didn't shake, not even a little. "Remember?" Something shattered in his eyes. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to beg, but the night exploded into red and white emergency lights. Sirens, dozens of them, coming from every direction. Cassian's head snapped toward the gates. His entire body went rigid, alpha instincts flaring. Black SUVs with no plates roared onto campus, tires screaming. Royal Aurelian insignia hidden beneath magnetic covers. Only someone who knew what to look for would notice the faint outline of the crowned wolf. My blood turned to ice. Dad's voice echoed in my memory from years ago. "If the monitors go dark for more than 6 hours, I will come myself." I had loosened the cuff too many times, let too much power bleed through. Cassian's gaze cut back to me, sharp, suddenly terrified. "Ravenna," he said, and my real name in his mouth sounded like a prayer. "What did you do?" I smiled, small, sad, unbreakable. "I existed," I whispered. Then I turned and walked toward the SUVs, every step steady, while behind me, Cassian Drake stood frozen in the moonlight, watching the only girl he'd ever knelt for walk straight into the arms of a king. Chapter 6. The King's Arrival. Homecoming night. The stadium lights were blinding, the air thick with grilled meat, cheap perfume, and the electric buzz of 20,000 wolves packed shoulder to shoulder. Silvercrest's football field had been transformed into a glittering coliseum. Scarlet banners, floating lanterns, music that rattled your ribcage. I stood at the 50-yard line in a borrowed black dress that clung like liquid night, hair loose down my back for the first time in years. No hoodie, no hunched shoulders, just me, waiting. I had known this moment was coming since the sirens 7 nights ago. My father's message had been one line, delivered by a stone-faced royal guard. Homecoming, center field. Do not make me drag you. So here I was. No cuff tonight. The silver band lay shattered in a royal vault somewhere behind the veil. My wolf paced under my skin, golden and restless, and finally free. The marching band finished their set. The crowd roared. Fireworks were supposed to explode next. Instead, every light in the stadium died at once. A hush fell so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Then the floodlights snapped back on, but only over the southern gate. Black SUVs rolled in without a sound. No plates, no markings. Just matte black steel and the faint shimmer of royal wards rippling the air like heat above asphalt. 20,000 wolves went still as death. The center vehicle stopped. Doors opened in perfect synchronization. 12 royal guards in charcoal suits fanned out. Wolves so old and lethal, the ground seemed to tremble beneath their shoes. And then he stepped out. My father. King Alaric Valorian, the Lycan King. 6'7" of living nightmare, wrapped in a tailored black suit that probably cost more than this entire university. Hair the same midnight as mine, braided back with threads of silver. Eyes molten gold, exact match to the ones now glowing in my own face. A single crown tattoo circled his throat. Black ink, ancient runes, the mark every monarch bears until the next heir takes the throne. He didn't walk. He prowled. Straight down the tunnel, onto the field, until he stood 10 feet in front of me. The stadium cameras zoomed in. Giant screens showed his face in perfect, terrifying detail. His gaze swept the crowd once, slow, deliberate, then settled on me. "Ravenna," he said, and the microphones caught it, broadcast it to every speaker, every phone, every wolf in the country. His voice was winter and thunder. "Come here." I walked to him. No hesitation. Chin high. The dress whispered around my legs like smoke. When I reached him, he cupped my face in both massive hands, gentle, reverent, and pressed his forehead to mine for one heartbeat. The entire stadium saw the king bow his head to a girl they'd called wolfless. Then he straightened, turned to the crowd, and the temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. "Who?" he asked, soft as a blade sliding from its sheath. "Made my daughter cry?" Silence. Absolute. Dead. A ripple started in the Iron Fang section. Red jackets, silver wolf crest. Wolves shifting aside like a wave parting. Cassian walked out alone. No entourage. No Seraphina. Just him in a black suit that looked slept in, eyes bloodshot, face carved from stone and gilt. He stopped 20 feet away. The king's gaze pinned him like an insect. Cassian dropped. Not a stumble, not a dramatic fall. He dropped to both knees in the grass, head bowed, throat bared. The ultimate submission of an alpha heir to a superior power. His voice cracked the silence wide open. "I did, Your Majesty." Gasps exploded through the stands. Phones shook in trembling hands. Cassian lifted his head. His eyes found mine across the distance, Arctic blue bleeding silver with unshed tears. "I rejected her," he said, loud enough for the entire world to hear. "I humiliated her. I called her worthless. I was wrong." He pressed both fists over his heart, the ancient gesture of total surrender. "I beg her forgiveness. I beg the crown's mercy. I beg, please." His voice broke completely. "Ravenna, take me back." The stadium was screaming now, some in rage, some in shock, some already howling for blood. I stepped forward. My father's hand settled on my shoulder. Permission, warning, pride. I walked until I stood over Cassian Drake, the wolf who had shattered me in front of thousands. Moonlight poured down like liquid silver, catching in my hair, in my eyes, now glowing pure, royal gold. I crouched, slow and graceful, until we were eye to eye. He was shaking, actually shaking. I reached out and lifted his chin with 2 fingers. His breath hitched. "You rejected a wolfless girl," I said, soft enough that only he and the microphones heard. My voice carried to every corner of the kingdom anyway. I smiled, slow, sharp, beautiful. "Be careful what you beg for now, mate." Then I stood, turned my back on him, and walked into my father's waiting arms while 20,000 wolves lost their minds and the sky itself cracked open with royal thunder. Trumpets blare. The crowd roars. A single golden flare shoots into the night like a coronation firework, and somewhere in the chaos, one broken alpha heir stays on his knees, staring after the princess he never knew he lost. Chapter 7. Crown and Collar. They didn't take me home. They took me to the fortress. Aurelia rises out of the northern sea cliffs like a black crown of stone and glass. Ancient walls laced with modern steel, windows that look like eyes, wards that hum so deep you feel them in your teeth. No one sees it unless the king wants them to. Tonight, the king wanted the world to see. The motorcade rolled through gates that hadn't opened in 19 years. I stepped out into a courtyard lit by floating witchlight, and every royal wolf in existence was already kneeling. My father's voice was quiet. "You will stay until the coronation trial. No arguments." Then he kissed my forehead and left me with the guards. I was a prisoner in my own palace. They gave me the Eastern Tower, my childhood rooms. Same view of the crashing sea, same 4-poster bed carved with howling wolves. Same silence that used to swallow me whole. Only now the silence had teeth. I stood on the balcony at midnight, wind tearing at my hair, when I felt him. Not the bond, though it ached like a bruise that would never heal. I felt his despair. Deep beneath the fortress, in the old silver cells carved into the cliff itself, Cassian Drake was chained. I didn't think, I just moved. Royal guards bowed as I passed. No one dared stop the princess tonight. The dungeons smelled of salt and cold iron. Torches flickered in brackets shaped like wolf heads. My bare feet made no sound on the stone. His cell was the last one, deepest, darkest, reserved for traitors to the crown. Cassian sat against the far wall, wrists and throat locked in silver cuffs that glowed faintly. Shirt torn open, bruises blooming across his ribs. Head bowed, hair falling into his eyes. He looked like a fallen king. The guard outside had conveniently disappeared the moment I appeared. I wrapped my fingers around the bars. Cassian's head snapped up. For a long moment, we just stared. Gold on ice, princess and prisoner. Then he was on his feet, chains clanking, crossing the cell in 2 strides until the silver burned his skin and forced him to stop inches from the bars. "Ravenna," he rasped. The sound of my name in that broken voice nearly undid me. I reached through the bars and touched his face. First voluntary touch, since the night he knelt in the stadium. His cheek was rough with stubble, burning hot under my palm. He leaned into my hand like a dying man tasting water. "I thought I'd never see you again," he whispered. "You followed me here," I said. My thumb traced the sharp line of his cheekbone. "You demanded audience with my father. You knew what the cells were for." I knew what I deserved. The honesty in his voice cracked something open inside my chest. I slid my hand down to the silver collar around his throat, runes pulsing angrily at my touch. My power flared gold, and the metal hissed, trying to burn me too. I didn't let go. "Cassian," I said softly, "why did you come?" He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. "Because the second your father called you daughter, I understood what I'd done. I didn't just reject my mate. I rejected the future queen of every wolf alive." His voice cracked. "I looked into your eyes that night on the field, and I saw the throne behind them, and I still wanted to kneel, not because I had to, because I needed to. His forehead pressed against the bars, right against mine. "I'm not asking for the bond back," he whispered. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed you to know, face to face, no crowd, no crown, that I see you now. All of you. And I'm sorry isn't enough, but it's all I have left." A tear slid down my cheek. I didn't bother hiding it. I reached through the bars with both hands now, one on his collar, one tangled in his hair, and pulled him as close as the silver allowed. His breath shook against my lips. "I hated you," I breathed. "I hated you so much it kept me alive." "I know," he said. "Hate me. Just don't leave me down here without ever hearing your voice again." The bond between us, jagged, bleeding, beautiful, flared so bright it lit the cell gold. I pressed my lips to his through the bars. Not a kiss, not yet. Just the promise of one. Breath mingling, hearts pounding in sync. "I'm not the one in the cage anymore," I whispered against his mouth. Then I let go. I stepped back, turned, and walked away while he called my name once. Broken, desperate, beautiful. At the top of the stairs, I paused, looked back down into the torchlit dark. "Sleep well, Cassian Drake," I called softly. "Tomorrow, the real trial begins." Behind me, chains rattled, and a low, wrecked laugh echoed off the stone. For the first time since I was 12, I fell asleep smiling. Chapter 8. Rebellion Moon. 3 nights. That's how long they gave me before the coronation trial. 3 nights to decide if I would step onto the obsidian dais under the full moon, cut my palm on the crown blade, and let my blood swear me to the throne forever, or walk away and lose my wolf for good. The kingdom was already tearing itself apart over the choice. Half the old packs wanted a queen who would burn the world down for them. The other half wanted me gone before I ever sat on the throne. And someone had just put a price on my head, high enough to make even loyal wolves think twice. I felt the shift in the air the moment the sun bled out over the sea. The fortress was too quiet. I was in the war room, maps of every territory spread across a table carved from a single werewolf's ribcage, when the alarms began. Low, mournful howls from the outer wards. My father's second, General Lysander, burst through the doors. "Rogue coalition, 200 at least. They've breached the eastern cliffs. Silver weapons. Assassination contract signed by the Voss bloodline." "Seraphina's family." "Of course." My father was already moving, voice like rolling thunder, ordering battalions into position. I started to follow. He caught my wrist. "You stay inside the keep. That is a command, Ravenna." I met his eyes, gold on gold. "You raised me to protect this throne, not hide behind it." He opened his mouth, anger, fear, pride warring across his face. Then the windows exploded inward. Silver-tipped arrows rained like deadly stars. I moved before I thought. Gold power flared out of me in a perfect circle, shattering every arrow mid-air into glittering dust. The room went still. My father looked at me like he was seeing his daughter for the first time. Then the far wall detonated. Rogues poured through the breach. Black tactical gear, silver blades, eyes wild with bloodlust and greed. I shifted without meaning to. Just my hands, claws of pure gold, longer and sharper than any alphas. The first rogue came for my throat. I caught him by the face and threw him 20 feet. After that, everything became sound and fury. I fought like the storm I was born to be. Gold light cracked through the halls like lightning. Rogues fell screaming. Royal guards rallied behind me, howling my name like a war cry. And then I felt him. Cassian. He shouldn't have been here. The silver cells were supposed to hold for weeks. But the bond screamed, and I turned just in time to see a rogue assassin level a silver longsword straight at my unguarded spine. Cassian came out of nowhere, half-shifted, black claws, eyes feral silver. He took the blade through the ribs to shove me out of the way. The sword slid home with a wet, sickening sound. He didn't even flinch. He ended the rogue's life with a single savage blow, then spun, blood pouring down his side. and planted himself between me and the rest of the attackers. "Touch her," he snarled, voice barely human, "and you die screaming." The rogues hesitated. Even mercenaries know when they're facing something unstoppable. Cassian's knees buckled. I caught him before he hit the ground. His blood was hot against my palms, soaking through my dress in seconds. Silver poisoning already turning his veins black. "Idiot!" I hissed, pressing my hand to the wound. Gold light flared from my palm, trying to knit flesh, but Silver fought back viciously. He laughed, wet, broken, perfect. "Couldn't let you have all the fun, princess." The fighting had moved deeper into the fortress. My father's voice roared orders somewhere far away. I dragged Cassian into an alcove, pressed him against the wall, and cupped his face with shaking hands. "You're dying," I said. My voice cracked on the word. He leaned his forehead against mine, breath shallow. "Then let me die doing the one thing I got right," he whispered. "Protecting my queen." I kissed him. Not soft, not sweet. I kissed him like the world was ending, because it was. Teeth and blood and desperation. His hands fisted in my hair, claws pricking my scalp, anchoring me to him. When I pulled back, his eyes were glowing silver gold, the bond blazing brighter than it ever had. "Reject me again," he rasped, blood on his teeth. "I dare you." I smiled through tears. "Never." I pressed my bleeding palm. I'd sliced it open on his claw without noticing, to the wound in his side. Gold power poured out of me like sunrise. Silver hissed and melted away. Flesh knitted, veins cleared. He gasped, back arching, eyes rolling white. When the light faded, the wound was a fresh pink scar, and Cassian Drake was staring at me like I was the moon herself. Footsteps thundered toward us, royal guards, my father's elite. I stood, pulling Cassian up with me. His hand found mine and locked tight. The rebellion moon hung huge and red outside the broken windows. I looked at the wolf beside me, bloody, breathless, unbreakable. Then I looked at the throne waiting at the end of the hall. I squeezed his hand once. "Stay with me," I said. He dropped to one knee, not in submission, but in promise, and pressed his lips to my knuckles. "Until the stars burn out, Ravenna Aurelia Valorian." The guards reached us. I lifted my chin, voice ringing clear through the smoke and ruin. "Let them come," I said. "Let them all come." Because the crownless girl was crownless no longer. And the wolf at my side had just chosen me over everything. Thunder crashes. A blood-red moon hangs low. 2 heartbeats sink into one war drum as the fortress braces for the final siege. Chapter 9. The breaking. I have never heard the great hall so quiet. 10,000 wolves packed beneath the vaulted ceiling, and not one of them dared breathe. Moonlight poured through the stained glass dome, painting the obsidian floor in blood-red shards. The coronation dais waited at the far end. Black stone steps, the ancient crown blade resting on velvet like it was sleeping. I stood in the center of the circle, barefoot in a simple white gown. No jewels, no armor. Just me and the weight of every crown I had never asked for. Cassian was on his knees 20 feet away. Silver chains wrapped his wrists, his throat, even coiled around his torso. The poison in them glowed sickly green, eating at his strength with every heartbeat. His head was bowed, hair hanging over his eyes, but I could feel him fighting the metal with everything he had left. Because if he looked at me, he would break, and he refused to break before I did. My father sat on the temporary throne to my right, face carved from winter stone. The council of 13 ancient alphas flanked him, eyes glittering with hunger. And in front of me, on her knees in chains that were clearly for show, was Serafina Voss. Her platinum hair was perfect. Her dress was torn just enough to look tragic. Tears slid down her cheeks like diamonds. She held the memory crystal up with trembling fingers. Small, black, humming with forbidden magic. "Your Majesty," she said, voice sweet enough to rot teeth. "The kingdom deserves the truth before its future queen is crowned." My father's knuckles went white on the armrests. Serafina pressed the crystal to the floor. Light exploded upward, forming a perfect sphere of recorded sound and image. Cassian and me in the war room alcove, blood still wet on the stones. His voice, raw and desperate. "I'll burn every throne in this world to keep you safe, even yours." My voice, fierce and trembling. "Then burn it with me." The words echoed off the vaulted ceiling like gunshots. Gasps rippled outward. Phones rose in shaking hands. The live feed was already spreading across every pack network on the continent. Serafina lifted her tear-streaked face to the council. "I only wanted to protect tradition," she whispered. "I only wanted to protect the crown from those who would destroy it for love." She looked straight at me. "Choose, Your Highness," she said, soft enough to cut bone. "Your crown, or the wolf who will always come second to it." The council erupted. "Treason! Execute the Iron Fang heir. She cannot rule if she is compromised. She will start a war for a rejected mate." My father stood. Silence fell like a blade. His voice carried without effort. "Ravenna Aurelia Valorian, step forward." I walked until I stood between Cassian and the throne. My father's eyes were ancient and heartbroken. "The law is clear," he said. "A queen who places personal bond above the realm cannot wear the crown. Reject him again, publicly, finally, and take your rightful place. Or refuse, and he dies at dawn. The choice is yours." I looked at Cassian. He finally lifted his head. His eyes were silver fire, fierce and steady and unafraid. He mouthed one word. "You! Choose you!" My chest cracked open. I turned back to my father. "I choose the realm," I said. The words tasted like ash. I walked to Cassian. Every step felt like walking across broken glass. When I reached him, I knelt, princess to prisoner, and cupped his face with both hands. He leaned into my touch, like it was the only thing keeping him alive. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Then I stood, turned to the council, and spoke the words that would shatter us both. "I, Ravenna Aurelia Valorian, heir to the Lycan throne, reject Cassian Drake as my fated mate. Fully, finally, irrevocably." The bond inside me screamed, a sound only I could hear, as the last thread snapped. Cassian's eyes went wide. A single tear cut through the blood on his cheek. He bowed his head and said nothing. The council roared approval. My father's face was unreadable. I walked past Serafina, who was smiling now, small and vicious and triumphant, and up the obsidian steps to the dais. I did not look back. I could not. The crown blade waited. I wrapped my hand around the hilt, and somewhere behind me, the wolf I loved more than my own soul was dragged away to die. I left him chained in the dark. I left him believing I chose the throne over him. I left him. And when the doors slammed shut and the torches went out, I finally let myself break. Curtain of silence. Then one shattered, golden howl that echoes through the entire fortress, and a single drop of royal blood hitting obsidian like the first crack of thunder before the storm. Chapter 10. Becoming. Dawn bled crimson across the sea. The Coronation courtyard was already full. Tens of thousands of wolves packed shoulder to shoulder beneath a sky the color of fresh blood. Obsidian dais at the center. 13 ancient alphas in their ceremonial black. My father on the temporary throne, face carved from granite and grief. And in the place of execution, Cassian Drake. Still in silver chains, still on his knees, still alive. The council had voted for a public death, beheading by the crown blade, the same blade I was meant to cut my palm with moments later. Tradition demanded the realm see justice served before the new monarch was crowned. I walked out alone. No crown yet. No cloak. Just the same white gown from the night before, now stained with Cassian's blood across the side where I'd held him while the bond died. The crowd parted like water before a blade. I felt every stare, every phone, every heartbeat. I did not look at my father. I did not look at Serafina, seated in the front row with her family, eyes glittering like she'd already won. I looked only at Cassian. He lifted his head when he heard my footsteps. His face was swollen, lips split, one eye nearly shut. But when he saw me, something fierce and proud and heartbreakingly gentle broke across it. He smiled, small, crooked, perfect, like he was proud of me for choosing the throne, like he forgave me for letting him go. I stopped in front of him. The executioner, a masked royal guard, stepped forward with the crown blade already unsheathed. I raised one hand. The guard froze. I turned to the crowd. My voice carried without microphones, laced with pure alpha command that made every wolf in the courtyard drop instinctively to one knee. Last night, I began, I did what a queen is supposed to do. I put the realm above my heart. I severed my mate bond in front of the world to prove I was worthy of this throne. A ripple of approval from the council. I smiled, slow, sharp, golden. Tonight I do what a queen must do when the realm tries to take the one thing that makes her strong enough to rule it. Gasps, murmurs, confusion. I turned to my father. He was already standing, eyes blazing with understanding. I looked at the council. By ancient law, I said, the reigning monarch may grant one pardon on Coronation dawn, one life, no questions, no appeal. I stepped down from the dais, walked straight to Cassian, and knelt in the dirt in front of him. The entire kingdom watched their future queen kneel to a condemned wolf. I cupped his bruised face. I choose you, I whispered, crown, wolf, and all. Then I stood and faced the executioner. Cut his chains. The guard looked to my father. My father's voice rang out like thunder. Do it! The blade flashed. Silver fell away in pieces. Cassian surged to his feet, swaying, bleeding, magnificent, and dropped to one knee in front of me. Not forced, not broken, chosen. He pulled something from his torn pocket, a ring carved from his own broken alpha claw, black iron banded with gold. He held it up with shaking fingers. I choose you, Ravenna Aurelia Valorian, he said, voice rough but unbroken. Queen of wolves, keeper of my heart, forever. I extended my left hand. He slid the ring onto my finger. The moment it settled, the bond that had shattered the night before blazed back to life. Brighter, stronger, forged in fire and blood and unbreakable will. Gold light exploded from us both, rolling across the courtyard like a sunrise. Every wolf felt it. Every wolf answered. A howl rose, first one, then hundreds, then tens of thousands, until the very stones of Aurelia shook with it. I pulled Cassian to his feet and kissed him in front of the entire kingdom. Not soft, not gentle, acclaiming. When I pulled back, I turned to the dais, wrapped my hand around the crown blade, and sliced my palm deep. Blood welled, royal gold, bright as the sun. I pressed my bleeding hand to the obsidian throne. Power surged, ancient, wild, mine. The crown tattoo blazed to life around my throat, black ink and living fire. I looked out at my kingdom, at my father who was smiling through tears, at Seraphina whose face had gone white as death, at Cassian standing beside me like he was born to it. And I spoke the words that ended one story and began another. Let the old laws burn, I said. A new reign begins today. Then I took Cassian's hand, climbed the steps, and sat on the throne with my mate at my side. The kingdom fell to its knees, not in fear, in awe, and somewhere in the shadows, Seraphina Voss was dragged away in real chains this time, screaming, forgotten, finished. The rebellion moon set. The golden dawn rose, and for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was always meant to be, crowned, mated, unbroken. Trumpets split the sky. The howl of an entire nation rises until it shakes the stars. Two heartbeats thunder as one, and a queen's voice whispers against her king's lips. Welcome to the new world, Cassian Drake. And the kingdom howls forever. The end.